This week, we explore the Ark of the Covenant, an analogy for the human mind, perhaps, the human body. What does it contain? And do those elements refer to spiritual elements that also allude to individual parts of man? Find out in our continued reading of The Initiates of the Flame by Manly P. Hall. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode number 646. I want to thank our contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast. Through your support, we've been able to create this show and make it a staple in Masonic education since 2011. If you are curious on how you can help support the WCY podcast, head on over to our website, wcypodcast.com. Click on Support the Show and check out the various options. And we have a contributor level, a fellow level, and a producer level, as well as a legacy partner level. And what does that legacy partner do? Well, that's kind of like you pick the topic and we do the show on whatever you want. We work together to do that together. We work together to create an episode, and we are in direct contact, and we'll talk about it, we'll plan it, we'll do the episode how you want to do it, get the interviews you want to get done, all of those things. Under those, of course, are producer, fellow, and contributor. Contributors, we put your name on the website. Fellow, we do that for you, as well as send you a personalized thank you card in the mail. And of course, our producer level gets the producer pin. Now, if you've been following along with our pin drama, we actually had an issue where we ran out of pins. It's never happened before. And this is thanks to those people who have supported the show either through just buying a pin direct or becoming a producer or a legacy partner. We decided that our design has been the same for a few years. We're going to upgrade and update the pin look. And so we did just that. It took a little while to get the design just the right way we wanted it and to get the tests done that came out perfect. And we've finally gotten there, and those pins are in production. And if we owe you a pin, fear not, we will get them to you. And I'll probably throw a little something extra in there just to sweeten the deal for being delayed. Other ways you can help support this show, of course, are going to be through the shop. You go to our website, click the shop. We've got handmade bespoke leather keychains. A lot of folks will get them done and they'll do them for their lodge members. So they'll order, several of them or their book clubs, and we'll do their book club design on one side, the square and compass on the other. We can pretty much do whatever you'd like. Leather I use for those particular keychains is a single piece of full grain, 3.5 to 4 ounce leather. It is chrome tanned so that it is slightly water resistant, and then we laser engrave them. And I do all that myself. So if you have a keychain, it's not like I send it out to have somebody else make it and then I get it and send it to you. Nope. It is me cutting them out, punching them, sewing them, burnishing them, laser engraving them, packaging them, and sending them out to you. So consider that a nice way to support the show, especially if you'd like to do a bunch of them, for your lodge brothers or whatever. We also have our books, Max Heindel's Ancient and Modern Initiation, The Master's Word, How to Charter a Lodge, and of course, It's Business Time. And just a note to say thank you for all of your awesome support. Now, what you're all waiting for. Manly P. Hall's The Initiates of the Flame, Chapter 5, The Ark of the Covenant. Perhaps one of the more interesting elements of all of biblical history, this mystical Ark of the Covenant that so many books have been written about, so many adventures trying to find it, whether you're thinking about Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark or something else, maybe Graham Hancock's book, The Sign and the Seal. Just one of those magical elements that seems to capture our imaginations. Well, let's see what illustrious Brother Manly P. Hall had to say in his book. Again, The Initiates of the Flame, Chapter 5, The Ark of the Covenant. Now, the chapter actually starts on page 55 of the text. However, on page 54 is an illustration of a man prostrating himself before the Ark of the Covenant. On his left, an urn, or an incense pot. You can see the two angels over the opening of the Ark, or the cover rather, as well as what looks to be a sort of solar disk. if you can imagine such a thing. The text below the image says, "The priest before the Ark of the Covenant, and the Spirit over the mercy seat." So clearly, it is supposed to be something. Now, we continue with the text. One of the most interesting symbols that has come down to us from the ancients is that of the Ark, or the box that was said to contain the sacred relics. Many people believe that this belongs particularly to the Jewish nation, but this is a great mistake, because it has been the birthright of every country to have the Ark. All have, like the Jewish people, lost much of their power and glory when they lost the sacred Ark. In ancient Chaldea and Phoenicia, the Ark was well known. India celebrates it as the lotus, and the ancient Egyptians tell us how the moon god Osiris was imprisoned in the Ark. In all the mystery religions of the world, individually and cosmically, the Ark represents the fountainhead of wisdom. Over the Shekinah's glory hovers as a column of flames by night and a pillar of smoke by day. Every country has seen and felt its presence when the priest kings and initiates bring out of an old civilization lost because of crystallization the sacred Ark, and surrounded by those faithful to the truth carry it into other lands and among other peoples. In every creed and religion we find crystallization. We find small groups of people separating themselves from their brother man. We find those who, clinging to the old, refuse to advance with the new. And whenever we find this crystallization, we find the spirit of truth carried away to other people and embodied in other doctrines. The ancient Ark of the Israelite never had removed from it the staves by which it was carried and moved, until finally it was placed in Solomon's temple. Neither does the spirit fire in man rest until finally it is enthroned in the holy place of his solar temple. Ever toward the rising sun, its bearers carry this sacred truth. Nations are born of those who love the truth, and are buried when they forget it. The time has come when its silent bearers have taken the sacred Ark and the Shekinah's glory, and in solemn file have moved across the waters and brought it to the new world. The call has sounded through the universe, and those who are true to their own higher principles have surrounded the sacred chest. Those who have sworn alliance to their own higher being are following the priests and their sacred burden, and a beautiful mystery temple is being built in this beautiful land of ours, loved and guarded by those who are laboring for humanity. The staves are still in the Ark, however, and only when real good can be done by it will it remain. The opportunity is now confronting the Western world. The knowledge of the ancients, the wisdom of the ages is knocking at the door and seeking those who will follow it. The bearers of the Ark have stopped and are gathering a nucleus of spiritual souls to carry on their work. And whether or not the word of the Lord will remain with a nation depends upon its own actions. And the actions of a nation are the collective actions of its individuals. If it finds nothing here attuned to itself, if it finds few that will answer to its call, the call of service and brotherhood, then will its priests lift again the staves, and the sacred work will go out into other lands. The life of a country thus gone, like the ancient city of the Golden Gate, it will be swallowed up in oblivion. The call is sounding, and those who love the truth and think and care for the light must join that band of servers who have for centuries dedicated themselves to the preservation of truth. Their lives they have given 1,000 times. Their happiness has been second to their duty. They are the keepers of the sacred word, and the law of attraction draws to them all who love and live the truth. A great influx of spiritual light comes to those who live the life and have learned the doctrine, and regardless of clan or country, they have joined the silent file of watchers and workers around the sacred Ark of the Covenant. Every individual by his daily actions is expressing more plainly than by words his ideals, his desires, and his attitude towards this great work. The composite attitude of a certain number of people either shuts out or lets in the light. Therefore, every individual has a great duty. A great work has to be done, and to that the student must dedicate his life. Then, whenever he may go, whatever he may do, he's being led, and the Shekinah's glory directs his footsteps. On the previous page, we see Aaron's rod, the cup of manna, and the 10 Commandments depicted one on top of the other, with the commandments in the background, Aaron's rod in front of it, and the pot of manna in front of it. Beneath reads the inscription, the rod that budded, the pot of manna, and the tablets of the law. In these 3 things contained within the ark, we see the threefold spirit contained within the ark of man's bodies. Continuing the reading. In the brain of man, between the wings of the kneeling cherubim, is the mercy seat, and there man speaks with his God, as the priest of the tabernacle spoke to the Spirit of the Lord. Hovering between the wings of the angels, man is again the ark, and within him are the 3 principles, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The tablets of the law, the pot of manna, and the rod that budded. But, as in the case of the ancient Israelites, when they became crystallized, the pot of manna and the rod that budded were removed from the ark, and all that was left were the tablets, or the letters of the law. When the individual crystallizes and excludes various sidelights from his mind, he excludes the life force which was flowing to him. In shutting out the strangers, he shuts out of his own life, and all that he has left are the tablets of the law, the material reasons from which the spiritual life has gone. Solomon's temple, with the perfected temple of the human body, the perfected temple of the universe, and the perfected temple of the soul, finally forms the perfect shrine for the living ark. There, at the head of a great cross, it is placed, and there in man it becomes permanently fixed. The staves of polarity upon which it was carried are removed, and it becomes a living thing, a permanent place where man converses with his God. There man, the purified priest, arrayed in the robes of his order, the garments of his soul, converses with the Spirit hovering over the mercy seat. This ark within is always present, but man can only reach it after he passes through the outer court of the tabernacle, after he has passed through all the degrees of initiation, and after he has taken the 3rd degree and becomes a Grand Master. Then, and then only, can he enter into the presence of his Lord. And there, in the darkened chamber, lighted by the jewels of his own breastplate, he converses with the Most High, the true spiritual essence within himself. We are working towards this, and the time will come when each person for himself will know the mystery of the ark, when the student through purification shall be led through the door of the Holy of Holies, and there be enveloped by the light of truth. This was his birthright, which he sold for a mess of pottage. To this end came he into the world, that he might bear witness to this truth, that through this light all men might be saved. The ark, that great spiritual principle surrounded by its loving workers, is calling all to follow it. When through materiality and degeneracy a great people are destroyed, or a continent sinks beneath the ocean, then those that are true are called around the ark, and as its faithful servers are led out of the land of darkness into the new world and promised paradise. All great teachings set forth the same thing. The student will find that it is true, and when he allies himself with the powers of light, when he becomes a channel for its expression, and when he radiates it from himself to all who need it, then indeed will the light protect him, and he shall become a son of God. Beneath this particular paragraph is shown a wreath of flame cupping a bottle, in which is contained the sun on the left, the moon on the right, and the ether which comes from the top of the bottle, or the cloud that is coming out of it, the vapor, if you will, is empty, but it's clear that there is a vapor escaping, likely alluding to some sort of alchemical process, removing the superfluities of a chosen duality to reveal things that are being boiled off, and what you're left with. The next page is actually page 62 and has the Holy Grail on it. But we'll discuss that next week when we read chapter 6, Knights of the Holy Grail. I hope you enjoyed this week's continuation of Manly Hall's The Initiates of the Flame. In this particular chapter, I found it interesting that once again we find this allegorical connection of the Ark of the Covenant being perhaps man or the mind of man, the Spirit of God sitting on the mercy seat, the brain of man, the idea of the law, the budding rod and the pot of manna as three parts that are contained within the man that Hall alludes to as sort of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but then alludes to the idea that when a given society fails to live up to the ideals of this goodness, then perhaps the ark in its larger context moves along to the next group of people who might employ it in ways that would allow for it to proliferate in a larger scope of society or be practiced by more and more people over and over again. One thinks slightly, if you're a philosopher and you've read the works of different philosophers, I tend to think of something like "Thus spoke Zarathustra" when he's trying to teach a certain philosophy, and when those people don't want to learn or don't want to listen, he moves to the next place to teach the same thing. I'd love to know your thoughts in the Craftsman Plus Facebook group or wherever you see a link to the show. One more time, I want to thank our producers, fellows, contributors, and legacy partners of the show, and even those of you out there who have just shared the show with your friends and brothers. That is always appreciated and helps us more than you know. Now, we will be back again next week with continuing on with Chapter 6, where we're going to talk a little bit about that other biblical thing. Yeah, the Holy Grail. We might have a little extra history on that one as well. So, we look forward to next week's episode. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you all next week. And until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.
Wait, that's me, man.